Hey, it's Soul, and this is different. This is going to be this is the first episode of what I hope to be is a long series of podcasts where I just talk, just me. No footage, nothing special like that. I'm just going to be talking about Warcraft or the World of Warcraft, and my life entirely from my perspective. Obviously, it's me. Yeah. I guess what I mean is that I'm not going to be talking about this as a balanced commentator, which I guess that is the closest thing to a persona that I have online. I mean, there's not that big of a difference, but it's going to be pretty unfiltered, and I guess I have stories to tell, or I have experiences that I want to share. A lot of people have different stories to share, and all of them are unique and special on their own. My story is only slightly more special, or my story is only slightly different because I'm one of those who has been here since the very beginning. There are those who like to say that, I started after Cataclysm when the game went bad or something like that, but I was here since the beginning, or before the beginning, back in the WoW beta, and I'm too lazy, but I have a statue right behind me. You know, that 10-year I stayed subscribed for the whole time statue. So I have one of those. So that's my badge. Ooh, whoop-de-doo me. But that doesn't make me special. It doesn't make my opinions or what I have to share that much more important. It's just that little bit to say, hey, yeah, I was here, I guess. As another reminder, like I said, it's just me. I'm not going to have any in-game footage. So think of this as, like I said, a podcast. So just sit back and listen and do your own thing. This piece or this series is going to be really, really personal. I'm going to be kind of an open book, kind of not, because of the way that I talk and the way that I am. But I'm going to try to pour my heart out and just tell you things. Well, I'm going to tell you things that you're not going to want to hear, and I'm not going to tell you things that you need to hear. It's just going to be me being honest and with my experiences, because I live two lives. I live the real fleshy 3D world life, but I also have lived on Azeroth, in this World of Warcraft, this incredible game that's changed everything for me. So that was a long intro. Yeah, let's get going. It's super fitting, of course, that I talk about 2004, especially with World of Warcraft Classic just around the corner. There's so many people, especially these days, loud voices, streamers who didn't exist back then. But there are these loud voices that lament, or they reminisce, or they're very nostalgic about the community. Ooh, community this, community that. When the WoW servers were good, when everyone knew each other, and you had to group, you wanted to group, and you wanted to stay in group, because it was that much harder to, of course, get those groups together. The saying that many of these people say is that it's about the journey and not the destination. The whole parallel to how things are now, how it's all about Endgame and things like that. And vanilla WoW, it was all about, the journey up to that point. So to that statement, to tell me that it's not about this, it's about that, don't tell me what WoW is supposed to be about. It's pretty ballsy to tell me, or for me to tell anyone too, how you should enjoy the World of Warcraft, how it should be, because I had a great time. I had a great experience that I don't want to replace. It was cool. I had fun. So anyway, back in 2004, mentally, spiritually, I was damaged, I guess. In my past life, or my background, I was a salesperson. I ran a tuxedo shop, and I upsold things. I sold services for phone companies. Like I said, well, okay, I guess I have to go there. I sold services for phone companies, and I built little networks of people to sell those kinds of services. So, back then, our group called it network marketing. But the real world, normal people, they would look at us and they would see a pyramid scheme. So yeah, I got caught up in that stuff. But I was one of those who were kind of good at it. You know, it made money and it was cool until one day it all just blew up in my face, and I was utterly humiliated. And then that's when, that's when the curtain was drawn back, and I found that I was offending everybody, friends, family, and whatnot. And so after that, I felt really abandoned, and I felt overly conscious about what people thought of me, especially afterwards in the whole fallout of this, because obviously I didn't do that anymore after that. But yeah, like what are people gonna think of me? What would people say behind my back? So it was really hard for me to try and meet people again. I can't even put it into words. It's even now this really debilitating. It was a really debilitating feeling. It was just fear. I feared people without really fearing them. I don't know. So I was run out from that job, and I wanted to lay low because money. So I was working at a Jamba Juice for a little while. That was awkward because the Jamba Juice that I worked at, it was all surrounded by these really young girls, and I don't know what they were talking about. I just stuck myself in the freezer most of the time. I was like, let me do some stuff in the freezer, because even then I didn't want to have very many close interactions with people, and so that made me even more socially awkward. But I tried my best to kind of stay back into the fold, even though I think I just came off as weird. So by the time 2004 rolled around and I heard about the World of Warcraft, and I talked about this in like the first video that I tried to share my life and all that. I was working at a Best Buy. All of a sudden I was selling computers, and instead of phone services, I was selling, these Best Buy services, and somehow would make you feel bad when you wanted to return these things because, hey, sir, madam, I'm just trying to deliver you a complete solution. Buzzword, But at the same time, this was me at like my peak introversion. I was an introvert. I was functional. I did stuff. I had a job. I had a girlfriend at the time. I had my family, people that cared for me, but I wanted to be alone. I wanted quiet. So when the interactions were done, when work was done, I would just totally shut down. It'd be quiet. I wouldn't want, at least in terms of quiet, I would want the people to be quiet. I just didn't want to be around people. But I was okay with games. I was a loner. Without trying to be a total hermit or reclusive person. But I also lived a life of playing video games. I love video games. Been playing since, typical past of playing video games. Played all these different systems, grew up to this, and I'll get to that. I'll get to that another time. But in general, when playing games, and especially during that time, and even now, I'm always looking for some sort of satisfaction. I'm looking for some sort of, some stimulation, but I'm also looking forward to the moments, those moments after where I anticipate more, or I start craving more, the next level, the next chapter, the next boss encounter. Cool. This was a great moment that I just experienced. What's next? I was craving that sort of high. I wanted adventure. And before WoW came out, I was already dabbling a little bit into the MMO genre because, well, an MMO theoretically doesn't end. You can always keep chasing because there's always a next thing, because there's something that should be in development. Of course, the reality is that not all MMOs last, but the sell there was that there would just be so much for me to do, or so many things for me to chase, that it would be overwhelming. But of course, the game has to be fun too, right? Like, I remember the days of Phantasy Star Online for the Dreamcast. Ooh, you remember that? And that shit was on dial-up. And because of that, I think that really affected the experience negatively. Now, when I was playing Like when I would play and then all of a sudden the phone would ring up. There we go. There goes my dual saber. Or there goes that, oh shoot, it's been so long. I don't remember that stuff very well, but it didn't hold me for very long, mostly because of just the way that the game was built. I couldn't stay engaged because I was frequently getting disconnected. I think that if the game came out like later, or if I had high-speed internet or DSL, whatever at the time, I probably would have been a lot more happy with the experience, but it was just too soon, I guess. The first MMO on PC that I played was, in fact, EverQuest, but I think I jumped into it without being fully prepared for what I was going to do. I mean, it would have been better if I had signed up, or if I had started playing with my buddy Flo, so I can have someone guide me through the experience. But because I tried doing it on my own, and that's something that was me. I wanted to do things on my own, but I couldn't. I just kind of fell on my face, and maybe it was just me being fearful or scared, or maybe I'm a big bitch, but I stopped almost immediately. I found myself so unengaged with it that it just left a really bad impression. So looking back, if I had gone into it with a buddy, that would have helped tremendously. But I did play Final Fantasy XI with friends. We all started together, so I learned my lesson, hey. But that didn't last very long either. That hooked me for a good 2 months or so. Because I remember when we first started playing, there was at least four of us. And we all hung out, we were LANing together, which entailed me carrying this big old honky 21-inch monitor, CRT monitor. So those things were 70 pounds. They were hella heavy. So I'm carrying it up a big old flight of stairs. And what's worse is going down a big ass flight of stairs with a 21-inch CRT. Just imagine that. It wasn't all that fun, but we did have fun at first playing the game until not long after I got some piece of armor, and it was like a skirt. I played as a guy. I was like a dark elf looking person with white hair. I don't know why, but yeah, I had this black blouse and this skirt, and my friends almost laughed me off of the game right then and there, because they were giving me so much shit over it. I'm like, man, it brought me back to when I was laughed out of my old job. It made me super, super uncomfortable, and that stuck with me. Even 15 years later, that moment, it still really gets to me. So that was a big turnoff. Everything was cool after that, but when it came to the gameplay for Final Fantasy XI, I eventually ran into a wall. I ran into this stopping point, and I was given a choice to either keep going or to quit. Maybe at the time I just didn't know any better. Maybe there was another path, but I found that there was not really much for me to do aside from, I believe the strategy in order to level at a reasonable pace was to group up with a bunch of people, go into the outdoor world or some area, and just keep chain pulling. Because if I remember this correctly, the more that you chain pulled, you got some sort of bonus. I think you got an experience bonus for it. So the whole idea was to party up with some people and to just keep wandering the land, killing stuff as fast as you can, so you can keep up this chain bonus. I hope I'm remembering this correctly. Otherwise, it's dude, you're psycho, soul, Jesus. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be stuck going at this, kind of faster pace alongside other people who are go, go, go. I like doing things at my own pace. I like being rewarded, not exactly rewarded for doing things at my own pace, but I just want to not be punished for not doing the thing that the game is trying to tell me to. I guess that's what I mean. I guess in the case of Final Fantasy XI, if the game is forcing me to party, otherwise I'm gonna suffer on my own trying to solo stuff, then that's a line that's crossed. I'm just gonna lose interest. So before WoW came out, I think that's the third time that I'm saying that now, but before WoW came out, I was cycling between two MMORPGs. One of them was a Korean game called Ragnarok Online. And that had a super grindy play style. You know, it's one of those cutesy little sprite based games. Your character runs around and you see stuff. You click it and then you start auto attacking it, and you can use abilities and so on and so forth. And I played on my own for the most part. You know, I had a couple of friends that played, and every now and then we would party together. But for the most part, it was an experience that I can do on my own. But it was super, super grindy. And even if you did have a party, it was still super, super grindy. So I guess that meant that it was okay. Or maybe just the gameplay appealed to me because it was a little bit faster than Final Fantasy. But I'm used to the grind. I'm used to playing Chrono Trigger New Game Plus like a dozen something times so I can make all the stats look like stars. Or I was used to farming brachiosaurs, you know, those big old dinos in Final Fantasy 3 or 6, however you want to label it. So I can get every character to have every spell in the game. And I did it for fun. So in Ragnarok Online, I was wandering around looking for a sense of just being a badass on my part. You know, looking for those cool moments. Cool, I got some dude behind a wall of fire and now he's getting himself killed, and you know, that's something that I would learn and I would apply. But in the long run, it didn't come because, again, that's the way the game was designed. I just couldn't scratch that itch because there weren't really any quests in RO, so the world didn't exactly acknowledge you, like, at all. I mean, you got stronger, you were able to tackle greater challenges, go into harder areas without getting your butt beat up. But it's not like the game changed, or I didn't unlock anything new. I could just go somewhere without dying. And that didn't quite do it for me, at least looking back. Back then, I would just get bored and I'd be like, okay, well, what else can I do? Let's find something else. And so I did. I found a game called City of Heroes. In a sense, City of Heroes was the direct opposite of Ragnarok Online, because there was a very high degree of customization in the character creation screen. In fact, that was like most of the game. Most of the game took place in the character creation screen, so you can make the kind of character that you want, customize the looks, the costume, and everything like that. Even create a backstory for like the whole sense of roleplay. And it was ridiculous. It was fun. It was very cool. I still have memories of like this homeless looking guy, and not a knock on actual homeless people, but like the whole story was he has these like really cool gauntlets, and these gauntlets gave him superpowers, but he spent all his money and lost his family and everything because all he cared about was wanting to be a superhero, and this is all he could buy. So now he fights crime while just trying to, you know, put food on the table, and that was him. So the theme was cool. It felt like there was growth, but at the same time, the actual gameplay and combat, it was super repetitive and it felt like molasses. City of Heroes is full of these really slow animation things. They're kind of like cast times, but instead it comes in the form of a really slow looking animation. And sometimes it would just kind of break me out of the... Let me explain how this works. So let's pretend you're in WoW. You see a bunch of mobs around a corner. You hit the mobs, you run around the corner, and let's pretend that these groups of mobs, it includes melee and casters and ranged and whatever. So normally what happens is that they all start running towards you, because the casters, they might start trying to throw a fireball at you, but when their cast goes off, you're not there. So they're like, oh, and then so they change or they switch stances to kind of try to find you so that you're no longer line of sighting them. So in the case of City of Heroes, you know, let's go back to the whole line of sight thing. The moment that I throw my attack, my ranged attack to grab those mobs, it's like a snapshot, because the ranged or the casters, they're going to start doing their attack animations, and as soon as it goes off, it's going to hit me, or chances are it's going to hit me, even if I go around the corner, because the attack rolls have already been decided based on the moment that I did my attack or I got their attention. it's awkward because you can be around the corner and all of a sudden you'd fall over dead. Be kind of and of course the melee, they're still running towards you because that functioned just fine. On top of that too, the actual quests and missions that you would do, you know, the backbone of the game, they followed like a really similar formula. It's always go into this instance place, kill everything in sight, click on the thing that glows, and then mission complete, hit a button, and then it'll exit you out instantly. There was an outdoor world, but there was, you know, very little, if anything, to do out there. I mean, there were mobs out there. You can farm them outdoors if you really felt like it, but there was no need to. And at the same time, after a while, you would get travel powers. You can do a super jump, or you can fly, and so you could just skip all this content. So City of Heroes was just a series of jumping from one instance thing to another, and eventually that just kind of wore me out. Oh, and on top of that too, the rewards were like really bland. Like you can unlock more customization options over time, but at least in the early days of the game, it didn't really do that. All you had were like these tokens that you slotted into your powers that made them stronger, made them have faster cooldowns or higher accuracy and things like that. But you wouldn't exactly get sort of the badass. You know, there was no dragon to kill. You know, he dropped something and then you could wield it in front of your friends and such. That wasn't a thing back then. And even now, there's like a private server for it that's been pretty successful so far. Even now, there wasn't anything like that either. So I wasn't fully satisfied with either game, but I just played both of them anyway. And from that, I still learned things about how MMOs worked, but more importantly, I learned things about myself. I like having choices. You know, if I see an obstacle in front of me, like a really difficult quest, I want to be able to have the option to do it on my own, to be able to ask for help so I can accomplish this difficult challenge, or be able to skip it altogether and move on to something else. In Final Fantasy XI, I felt stuck because I was forced to group. Otherwise, I would just have this miserable experience on my own. So that didn't really work out for me. The game felt very limited in that respect. And then finally, the World of Warcraft came around, and for the second time, a video game changed the course of my life. The World of Warcraft had a really clever formula to get a bunch of fans, and you know, I was one of them, because WoW is an MMO based on the RTS. It has an existing story, so that made it really easy for someone like me to instantly feel like they're part of this world. And I didn't even jump in yet. It's like, hey, explore the world of Azeroth after the events of the Frozen Throne. I was like, ooh, I want to see what happens next. Like, I had no idea what was happening or no idea what to do when I got into the WoW beta. Like I said, I just wanted to see what happened next. You know, what happened after Illidan got all jacked up and after Arthas was frozen in his popsicle thing, and you know, this orc, he founded a nation. How's that going? I wanted to reconnect with the story. So I don't think I'm alone when I say that I came into the World of Warcraft as a Warcraft fan first, as opposed to an MMO player who's chosen for the next world to explore or the next boss to kill. And like I had said so many other times, it was like 20 minutes into the beta and I was hooked. I was like, dude, I'm getting quests to do things, and the world is acknowledging me and giving me stuff for it. Like, I'm getting bracers or a dagger, and I can see myself, you know, actually wearing it. Wow. So this is MMOs. Okay. Apparently I've been playing the wrong games. WoW at the time checked off a lot of boxes that I had at the time. Like, I wanted to play a pet class. I thought that was cool. So that's why I rolled a warlock at first. There's equipment that I can get and use and see. Like, I remember when I put on my first helmet and shoulders, and I was like, oh my god, oh, you know, it was it was one of those moments. Yeah, I think it was in the high 20s, somewhere in Hillsbrad, that I got my first either shoulders or helmet or both, something like that. And the theme of WoW took off because like I've been saying, I'm looking at this post world that has been established for me already. It already had its foot in the door. It already had my interest, unlike MMOs that you walk into cold, which is kind of a cool thing too. But WoW already had an impression on me, and that helped greatly. I chose Undead because that's the race that I played most often when I played Warcraft 3 with my buddy. So I was interested. I was like, cool, here I am coming out from the crypt, ready to serve the Dark Lady and find out, okay, what the heck has she been up to? Something lore. Vanilla scratched the itch. But more importantly, this is a really gross analogy, but more importantly, WoW gave me a rash. It just gave me so much more to do and explore, and it was compelling. It was compelling enough for me to want to complete that quest, and then it would immediately follow up with, hey, there's more to do. And the world was so big that I knew that I can find more and more of these moments and more things to learn and know and discover. One more level until I can get to this, or one more quest until I can access that. I kept chasing. It was intoxicating. And in such a big world, I had choices to tackle the content the way that I wanted to, and that was extremely important, even if I wasn't quite conscious about it at the time. I didn't enjoy the World of Warcraft the way that classic fans, I guess, would tell you that you should enjoy it. Community this, community that, finding groups in town, building relationships, social things. that wasn't me at the time. The stories about the kid who's, socially awkward, or like the war vet who is looking to escape, or the cripple who can't go outside and play. But that's in the offline world. That's in the 3D fleshy world. But in game, in their clan, in their guild, whatever, they're the hero of their story. They're respected. They're confident. Their personality changes. People have those very sharp divides between their offline and their online lives. And this online persona is something that they escape to, because now they can connect and build relationships in what was at the time unconventional ways. And it was great. Those are fantastic stories. That didn't happen to me though. That was introverts in the real world, introverts in WoW. That was me. That was the reality of it. Like I wanted to experience the world. I was interested in it. And I wanted to immerse myself without being tapped on the shoulder to like, hey, let's go do that quest together, or let's do that dungeon. It's like I wanted to role play, but it was role playing in an audience of one, I guess. But people, it kind of snapped me out of that. It snapped me back into the reality of it, and I didn't like that. I guess I'll just call myself out now, because the comments will definitely do it for me. I played WoW like it was a single player game. And I might as well say that unapologetically, because, well, why not? It's been like 15 years, I might as well just admit that. What's the point of fabricating, right? I've changed over those past 15 years, but at that time, that was how I took in my WoW experience. So vanilla gave me a lot of choices. I could go level here, or I can go level there. If I ran into a difficult quest, it's like, cool, I'm a warlock. I was better equipped to handle more difficult tasks or killing elites, unlike some of the other classes and specs. And I definitely, things would definitely have been different if I didn't have access to a pet class. But it was cool because I could challenge myself thanks to that. Or I could skip it. I can sidestep the elite quest. I could sidestep the dungeon, skip it, and not feel punished. I wouldn't be missing out on too much. I mean, yeah, I'd miss out on like that cool piece of gear or the powerful weapon, but there were tens of zones left to explore and hundreds of quests. So I would find something eventually. And I did. I think I skipped half the dungeons that were in vanilla. Even after the first time that I leveled up to 60, I had like 6 of them. Like multiple warlocks, multiple hunters, a warrior, and a shaman. So, I'll just read off a list. That'd probably be easier. I did Shadowfang Keep. I did Scarlet Monastery, the cathedral side. One of the parts of Meridon, the last part with the with the rock elemental, the mountain giant at the end. I did Zul'Farrak. And when it came to leveling, that was it. That was the whole routine. Everything else I just skipped. And then during Endgame, I did a couple. I did Stratholme. I did Sunken Temple, Blackrock Depths. What's not on the list? Blackrock Spires, the upper and the lower ones. And I'm pretty sure that's it. Those are really all the dungeons that I ran. Most of the time I skipped them because they didn't really give me anything that I didn't know that I would replace later. Like leveling dungeons were largely not part of my routine. They were just kind of a waste of time, but there were so many of them. And so that was something easy to forgive. Like, it's like, okay, great, I'll get some gear from this dungeon. It'll last a couple of levels, but what does that really equate to? A couple of saved shadow bolts, maybe one less life tap, not having to apply corruption a second time. I don't know. And even now, when it comes to dungeons, like I'll get my jollies out of the first or second experience as I'm learning things and discovering things, but then after that, it's just farming for gear. And for me, it's more about the experience and the accomplishment of getting through that challenge as opposed to farming the stuff afterwards. Like I said, I've changed, but at the time, it wasn't all that interesting for me. But throughout my vanilla WoW career, I learned. I learned more classes. I discovered more zones. I was discovering things as I went. Like when I discovered that wands were actually useful. Dang, that was a big moment for me. It's like, wow, I'm that much more powerful. I can life tap that much less. And then I don't recall exactly, but I know that later on they were able to add. They added some feature where you can auto shoot wands, because before you had to press the shoot button each and every time, and that was kind of a pain. But I did it anyway. But then afterwards, after a while, they let you auto shoot, and that just. This is God mode. This is way too easy now. The other characters that I made, the shaman and the warrior, those were more like of a side experience. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to feel the friction of how much more difficult it felt to be a different class that wasn't a pet class. Because and playing WoW, it's more than just exploring Azeroth. It's exploring the different classes and the perspective that they offer, and of course, it's learning about yourself too, and the kind of player that you are, the things that you like doing and not like doing. And I learned that I didn't like playing as a melee class. I liked being a pet class at the time. That was my thing. But I made a bunch of other characters. I tried to team up with friends who had all played. They all played Alliance, and that was something that kind of turned me off because I just wasn't really jiving it with them. Sorry, Alliance players, but my Horde roots, they run really deep. But I tried playing with them, so I do have 2 max level Alliance characters, or level 60 Alliance characters. But by the time I would get to that point, I'd be like, hey, cool, we can play together now. Maybe I can experience this thing that everyone else is experiencing because it's with people I know and I'm comfortable with. But then they quit. They would quit playing, or they would be on break or something. I'd be like, great, I spent the past couple of weeks trying to level this guy, and now you up and leave. But that's a very that's a very common thing that happened to people. It was hard for me to connect with my friends. It kind of sucked. So I flew solo, just kind of doing my thing, and made a bunch of characters, tried things out, got a better feel of what I like and don't like. And each time I became smarter, more cunning, more efficient. I learned that a wand is greater than any piece of gear in the early game. And going pretty much all the way up to Endgame, I knew which zones that I should skip. I knew what was like the most lucrative place to find stuff. I remember doing the I think the quest line was something Helcular's Revenge, where it was somewhere in Hillsbred where you revive someone and they raise skeletons. And I did that multiple times. I did multiple playthroughs just so I can do that quest for the sake of finding out, hey, can I raise South Shore to the ground with this guy? And it never happened, but I kept trying to do it. So slowly but surely, the adventure, the mystery, it started to unravel. It became less of a journey and more of like a formula to follow. Like here's my path, here's the thing that I do, here's the routine, and it became, I became more efficient and knowledgeable. But the experience, well, there was no more experience. It just became a repetition. It became monotonous. The World of Warcraft was the first game that I invested enough time and energy into that I finally got to experience Endgame. What happens at max level? What happens when the experience bar stops going? When your talent points, you get no more of that stuff. What's next? And from that, I ran into problems. I suddenly found that the numerous branching choices that I had, going from this zone or that zone, this quest line or that quest line, I ran out. I started to run out of stuff to do. I ended up dumping dungeon and elite quests that I just couldn't do on my own, only to find that that was all that was left. Just dungeon and elite quests, and of course, all the many quests that I just missed in hindsight. So I thought to myself, well, I might as well look at what raiding is finally all about. What's this thing that I've been, trying to evade for so long? This seems to be the only way to go. So as I started working through some of those quest lines and figuring out, okay, this is the thing that will eventually lead me to the attunement for Onyxia's lair or molten core, I started to read up and find videos somewhere as to what all this is all about. And it just summed up to, my perception of raiding in the World of Warcraft back in those days was it's just 40 people trying to fight for not 40 pieces of gear. It was cutthroat. It was drama. It was interesting. But was this going to be the thing to chase in WoW's endgame? Was this really going to be what Blizzard is telling me is worth it? Is worth doing? I mean, I remember seeing the people dancing on the mailboxes in Orgrimmar and elsewhere, and I was one of those people that would be like, ooh, who's that? That looks crazy. I would inspect them and I'd see, there are 7 out of 8 pieces of whatever set it was, and it'd be awesome. It'd be crazy, but they were also just standing there like, is this what I'm working for? Am I working to build up this paper doll and present myself for less experienced or less fortunate people to envy over? No, it's not. And I began to understand that there's a second journey once you hit level 60, once you start doing endgame, because now this journey is about developing yourself as a character and as a person to defeat the biggest, baddest boss that is in front of you, at least at the time. Unfortunately, the me of 2005, 2006 now, I wasn't ready for it. It just couldn't connect to me. I couldn't find it appealing at all. I didn't want to meet all these brand new people and get to know them and open up to them and trust. I just wasn't ready for that. Getting some fancy pieces of gear and killing the dragon wasn't worth exposing myself to something like that again. I just felt way too vulnerable. To sum that up, vanilla raiding asked too much of me, and it offered too little for me to care about. So that just passed me by. It didn't feel like there was much of anything else for me at the time. It was raid or die. That was the saying, and I was dying. At least until I really started to get a taste for PvP. I was there when the honor system first kicked in, and Hillsbred Foothills was painted white with skeletons. It was a bloodbath. Even on a small server that I was on, it was a Destromath, which was a PvP server. The place was just littered with corpses and lag and server crashes all the time. very nostalgic. And as more of the PvP system started to flesh out with the honor system and battlegrounds and things like that, I started to identify, hey, these are things that I can work for. There are some goals, and there's a path for me. I found something to chase. The engagements that I would have with my fellow Horde comrades were limited, get the flag, go here, go there. It was temporary, it was simple. And as for my interactions with the other faction, it wasn't so much about language, because the language between the opposite factions is violence. So between honor ranks and Alterac Valley rewards, there was something to do. There was something to work for, and so I did as much as I could until the monotony set in. Because I didn't have what it took to be a high warlord or the high warlord for the Horde. I still had a job, I still had a girlfriend, and I just didn't have that sort of dedication. And in large part, I just didn't have that kind of skill either. And I wasn't a two-handed Wind Fury shaman. So it's not exactly me getting bored. I mean, I had multiple max level characters. I've seen all the zones. I've played alliance characters as well. I was just running out of things to chase, things to do. And I had to really come to grips with that feeling, even though I didn't quite understand it at the time. After all, this is the first time I hit max level in an MMO, and I did it multiple times. Like, what's next? I was hoping for some sort of update over the next couple months and more after the launch of WoW, and I was like, cool, maybe I'll find a new thing to explore, a new goal to reach. But what came next was another dungeon, more raids, more 40-man content, or 20-man content, and then 40-man content. Now in today's WoW, I'd be excited. I'm like, great, something cool for me and the team to do. Back then, though, it was like, oh, great, more of the social stuff that is passing me by. And mentally, I struggled to try and get into something like that. I tried hopping into a Molten Core one time. The raid leader ended up ninjing the gear after that one boss with the dogs. Magnamadar, I forget the name, sorry. But after that happened, the group broke up, and there was a bunch of smack talk, and I was like, this is a very poor experience. I know that that's not what raiding was about, but it left a really bad taste in my mouth, and after that I didn't bother trying. I was a big fan of vanilla. I had lots of fun, but then I just ran out of stuff to do. And the things that Blizzard was putting out, the other content updates, just wasn't for me, unfortunately. I don't want to just quit either. I mean, there had to be something that was outside the box, and I tried to explore that a little bit. Some things didn't even occur to me. Like, I didn't really think about, hey, maybe I'll just try to be in a goblin and just try to make a bunch of gold. RPing didn't really occur to me because, again, social, ineptitudes and all that. No, I definitely didn't want to RP and put myself out there like that. So eventually, WoW became just another game in the rotation. So I was in fact playing Ragnarok online, and I would do stuff there until I felt bored, and then I would switch to City of Heroes or City of Villains because that came out afterwards, and I would have some fun there until I got bored, and then I'd hop onto WoW, do some battlegrounds, try to get some stuff, get bored, and I would do that throughout the day. That was my life. And WoW was great. I want to try to, I'm not trying to knock on Classic. I'm definitely not trying to knock on Classic WoW fans, because if you want to play, then definitely play. I think you're going to have a great experience, especially if you've never experienced it before. And if you want to relive that experience, well, the experience is your own. But if you're encouraged to try, or if you're thinking about trying, then I'd say try it, please. When I hopped into the WoW Classic beta, it was familiar and it was unfamiliar at the same time. It was very weird because it was still WoW, but the camera angle felt a little bit different. The music and sounds, it sounded the same as ever, but it also felt like 15 years ago. But it also felt like it was just yesterday when I was playing through this experience, waking up in Tirisfal Glades, wandering into Brill, and so on. So the nostalgia really started to kick in when I started playing the Classic WoW beta. I remembered things. I forgot things. I forgot a lot of things. I remembered things incorrectly. That was a treat. So it was kind of like riding a bike after 15 years or so. But just like a bike, you get used to it, and then it becomes very familiar. And then came the critical problem that I knew what was coming, but I really felt it. As soon as I hit level 10, I believe, it all just started feeling familiar. I mean, I was still getting lost. I was still going in the wrong directions, but it all just clicked back together. I knew what I needed to do. Get a bunch of gear, sell everything because reasons. Save the cloth for bandages for later. Save the food. Dump the water. You're not going to need it. Make a wand, and then nothing else matters. and keep doing that until I can make the next level wand, and then the next level wand, and then by then I'll usually have enough gold to buy something decent from the auction house. That's usually how it worked, and yeah, and all that stuff just came back to me very quickly. So the old me came back in the classic beta, and the old me was, I don't want to party with anyone. They're just gonna slow me down. I'm just trying to go for the next thing, the next talent point, the next summon. Although I would totally skip, although I knew that I was totally gonna skip on getting the succubus. So like, what am I gonna need that for? So in the beta, and I think my character's still there now, I'm level 10, I have a Void Walker, I have a wand, a very powerful wand, and otherwise I'm naked. The fact that the experience and the gameplay and the flow between classic WoW and the modern game, retail, whatever you want to call it, the fact that they're different didn't matter to me. The revelation just hit me like a brick in that moment. I felt like I was just leveling an alt. I'm just leveling another character, and there's nothing special about it because I've done this before. The memories that I have of vanilla WoW are irreplaceable, absolutely irreplaceable. I'm not gonna be surprised encountering my first Son of Argal because I know how to handle it this time. I'm not gonna wonder where that mechanical chicken is going to take me. I'm not gonna suddenly turn back into like this green, wide-eyed person from before who was hoping for something exciting to chase for in the next update because I know everything that's gonna happen. And I'm not gonna change things up and force myself to be like, ooh, let's see what happens if I embrace the community this time. Because that's not how I want to play. I want to play the way I want to. I want to solo and I want to role play as a loner. That's just what I do. And I want to have something to look forward to. But for you guys and girls out there, I want you to have the best experience over in classic WoW. Despite how many downvotes I probably have by now. Take a look. So basically I love vanilla WoW, even though in some video I said that it was not my most favorite experience, but it was still a great experience. There are plenty of moments. It's just that I ran out of that, and in the end I ended up farming those. I ended up finding cool moments in that one PvP instance, or that one time in Terran Mill when me and that rogue did this and this and this. Those were cool, but the chase for something new, a new adventure, that's something that mentally, like I said, I just wasn't there for. I had to put that on hold. I figured that there was going to be a lot more to come. That's why I stayed subscribed, and I was just kind of cycling through. I was holding out hope. And later it would pay off. There was a lot more to come. I would learn even more about the game, about this world that we live in Azeroth. And more importantly, I would learn more about myself as I grew further into my adulthood and how all that ended up mixing together. So, yeah. Thanks for letting me share with you, and I'll see you next time. Stay breezy.